80% of Iran's population live in cities. 50 years ago, this number was 40%. To avoid the expansion of large cities, the policy of suburban development in the form of satellite cities was adopted. But employment opportunities and public facilities are still limited to the major cities. When we found out the municipality of one of these satellite cities, a commuter town near city of Shiraz, has announced a competition for a project that aimed to improving standards of living, we submitted with no hesitation. The site of project was surrounded by social housing projects. Projects that have been conceived and executed in the worst way possible. A reputation of typologies which are more about isolation than connectedness. Public space is just a residual of serial placement of low-quality residential towers. But we have historically experienced living in different spaces in central Iran, where central courtyard, organized roofed spaces of a house or neighborhood in continuous connection with nature, shadow, and the ground. In this project, we try to redefine the central courtyards through making them a public field instead of private ones with diverse interconnections. Roofed spaces are arranged around these permeable connected yards, and instead of a linear circulation, we have a sequence of connected aguras with varying scales. There is no street anymore. In other words, not only the yards inform the overall configuration of project, but also the spatial pockets that host various programs are informed by them in terms of their scale and orientation. To form a connection between cells, as well as a healthy relationship between the project and the ground. The result provides an antithesis for the neighboring social housing in its organization, its approach to provision of public space, in relation to the ground, and even in its way of negotiating the skyline. In villages of Iran, construction is done by local people. Material formation is more primitive, approximate, and improvised. In the final round of the competition, inspired by the traditions of placemaking and construction, we try to develop a solution for the construction of the project. The proposed construction technology builds upon our previous experiments. In a previous project, we gave some flexible guidelines to this Mr. Hamid Khan, the son of the neighborhood grocer, to build a quality space from earth material. We heard that later on he continued doing this for a living. We want to consult about the construction of this project, but he was too busy to answer the call. Here too, residential units will be gradually built around the courtyards by local. Little by little, the city-like complex would grow from the ground. In this hostile climate, a combination of form and material play a role of passive solutions for climate control. The growable gene of these material-driven form can interlace the whole fabric of clusters in different scales related to their program. With an active skyline in the desert. Similar to the concept of thick ground, as traditional Iranian cities were often called. This is achieved through a series of proposed land operation. To activate differing spatial datums. In center of Iran, the limits of shadow are the limits of habitable space. Variety of scales and different heights make different degrees of shading in shared space. This effect facilitates passage and pause in the project. Vast and diverse interiority provides services and welfare infrastructure for the district. And even beyond that, has the generosity to welcome the neighboring social housing habitants. In religious ceremonies or social celebrations, in cultural events, and even practice of daily life. Such a space is what I wish for us in Iran. A space that is informed by economic realities and spatio-social possibilities to resistance to the mass-minded production of space. Right on the border of familiarity and strangeness. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Another really fascinating presentation. Karen, kick us off.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. It's great. I think the starkness between the housing and this is enormous. I just imagine what it will look like in 10 years' time when people have moved in and put 100 satellite dishes or aerials and, you know, all the stuff people come with. And I think that is what is important. And I think of Doshi, the Indian architect, and how his housing and his projects actually accommodate for that. So for me, it would really be, how is this going to look when the real people are there, and how much are you allowing for that, so that there's more difference, which is in the villages you showed us?
Actually, this mixed use is some cultural and also commercial, and the little part, the little masses are residential for renting, you know, and the municipality wants to build this project because compensate the lack of culture and lack of standard of living that housing. It's not one project, 7 projects in that area, that city. They want to build this for that one. So I think because of the supervision of municipality and not permanent resistance, maybe we can have some suggestion to them to eliminate this kind of, I don't know, disruption or something like that. Thank you.
Paul?
I don't know what's happening in Iran at the moment, but I saw 3 projects brought to our panel yesterday from Iran. An explosion of activity that's coming out. Joy to see. You speak to us in English, but we don't need any language to help us with understanding this. It speaks for itself. I don't have anything but a question to ask, which is what are these external walls made of? And I'm thinking of sustainability and KULF and the whole agenda, eco agenda, and also the beauty of the walls in their form, elevation section and plan. But can you just tell us a little bit about what it's made of?
We want to try with rammed earth.
I thought so, yeah.
Yes, but the previous one was mud with hand. They soften it. But in this case, we tried and built some 2 meter with rammed earth. And some experiment that this area, the earth is appropriate
Usable.
for them.
If there's time, there's a sequel question now.
Yes, go.
That is, I was very persuaded by your earlier photographs of the original buildings, much more organic and much less exacting. And I'd be very interested if you just, I'll speak slowly, I'd be very interested if you could speak just for a moment on how you mediate between the very organic and imprecise nature of the original villages and your highly ordered and controlled facades.
I'm trying myself to less ordered, but it's the way that I learn, so I'm negotiating with myself that how we can, for example, that project, it was some sort of oral relationship between the builder and me to do in that way, for example, reach this curve to that, and in this kind of relationship, I think we can. But it was a very big project. We should do exact forms and do exact geometry.
Christine?
I think that's really amazing.
Thank you very much.
That is the key
It's
to
a
this.
very beautiful, very sculptural scheme. I was going to ask 2 questions. One of them is to do with the nature of public open space. And from what I can see, there's no cultural tradition of, if you like, space beyond the walls of the building actually being open to the public, because the landscape, the natural landscape, is so hard and it's so desolate. But I just wondered about how people would approach this development. In what way would they actually, if you like, go towards this particular constellation of buildings? And also, given the fact that you've got a great sort of uniformity of materials, how do you navigate your way through from one space to another? I mean, beautiful as the courtyards are, and individual as the courtyards are, if I wanted to get from the outside right down to the inside of the smallest space, I'm not sure I'd be able to find my way very well, but perhaps you'll tell me otherwise.
It's 2 levels of promenade, one in courtyard and one in the roofs. If you wear a roof, you can see everything, so you know that. But another way is that because of the scale, they are very tiny and they are very big because of the commercial and culture. And because we have mosque here and here, and we can read the whole picture with the scale and the height of these areas.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's a really fascinating project, and the idea of kind of trying to reconceptualize an Iranian vernacular for the present day has a kind of resonance. I think I agree with Paul. It's the idea that your renderings are extremely pristine. It'd be interesting to see what happens in reality when people start to inhabit it, and it gets a little messier, but that's not to say it won't have a richness because of that vitality. It's a competition entry, so what
Yes.
was the... Did this win? Is this going to be built? What's the future for it?
It was an open competition. Five are me and some other office. 5 of them shortlisted. We at the end we were the second one, not winner. But because of the situation of the collapsing the economy, whole the project is yes.
Is they're not going to not going to build anything?
No.
Well, that's a terrible shame, because what was the winner like? Was it anything like yours? Or
No,
was
it was one of my friends. One building
Right.
and steps go around, and was a big interiority, you know.
Mm. But presumably the...
They loved that because it was more monumental.
Yeah, yeah. But presumably the work that you've done on this could be repurposed in other projects, so there is a kind of idea of a prototype that could be developed elsewhere.
Anywhere across the Arab world.
Now this is my practice. I'm trying to redefine something that we have.
Yeah. So the ideas may take fruit
Yes,
in other
yes,
in other forms.
yes.
Okay. Well, thank you. That
Thank
was
you.
very interesting.